Hey guys, tonight we wander deep into the jungle, beneath thick green canopies dripping with humidity, where ancient voices once murmured to the stars. You're barefoot on mossy stones, brushing against ferns as howler monkeys scream their morning opinions above you. Somewhere in this thick maze of vines and shadows, time isn't ticking, it's turning. Spiraling. Wrapped in carvings and carved in stone. You're about to follow in the steps of the Mayan timekeepers, people who didn't just count days, they commanded them. Their lives depended on measuring moonlight and convincing kings not to harvest a day too soon. You probably won't survive this kind of pressure. One miscalculated equinox and boom, you've got famine and an angry sun god. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see who else can't sleep around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in the lowlands of the Yucatan, and it's sticky, dense, and timeless, almost literally. Around you, a city rises from the jungle. Not skyscrapers, but stepped pyramids, steely covered in strange glyphs, and stone pathways worn smooth by bare feet over centuries. You're walking through Copan, or maybe Tikal, it doesn't really matter, because they all shared something uncanny, a hunger to measure the world. The Mayans didn't just watch the stars for fun. No, they baked them into the bricks of their cities, into the staircases of their temples. Their astronomy was also city planning, and their calendars were their gods' to-do lists. One thing you notice quickly, there are no clocks. But you're not late. You're precisely on time, because everything here is on time. You pass a timekeeper, a priest-like figure wrapped in jaguar pelts, crouched beside a bowl of incense and a shell horn. He's not just gazing up at the heavens, he's interpreting them. Because the Mayans believed the cosmos was a living script, and they were its readers. And like any overly ambitious reader, they annotated the heck out of it. You hear him mutter something about the heliacal rising of Venus and the corn gods frowning. You pretend you understand and keep walking. The jungle smells of wet bark, clay, and something that might be burnt chocolate or possibly snake. Bird calls echo like odd alarms in the canopy above. The city is waking up, not with a rush, but with intention. Every movement, every fire lit, every offering placed, happens according to a calendar. Actually, multiple calendars. We'll get to that tangle later. For now, just know this, your Fitbit would weep trying to sync with what's happening here. The Tsoken, the first of their many calendars, is 260 days long. That's not arbitrary, it lines up with the average human gestation period. So yes, their timekeeping literally starts in the womb. You're essentially a walking timepiece. Somewhere in this, there's a joke about morning sickness and prophecy, but we'll leave that buried like a royal tomb. Historians still argue whether the 260-day count was purely astronomical, agricultural, or deeply spiritual. Some say it tracks the movements of zenithal sun passages. Others say it lines up with crop cycles, or perhaps ritual days for midwives. Or maybe the answer's all of the above. That's kind of the Mayan vibe, yes, and you pass murals of gods with curling tongues and calendar wheels spinning in spirals. These people didn't fear time, they partnered with it. Each day had a personality, a mood, a fate. You could be born on a day that predicted you'd be a good singer, or that you'd definitely be sacrificed. Tough luck, but hey, at least it was scheduled. One scholar once joked that the Mayans invented astrology before it was cool, and they did it without needing to invent Mercury retrograde. Instead, they had something called cartoons, and you'll hear more about that down the path. Now you step onto a platform aligned so precisely with the sun that even on this sleep journey, you squint. The equinoxes strike it like clockwork. The corners of temples catch fire with golden light twice a year. Not metaphorically, literally. Light crawls up the stairs like a divine snake. And here you are, crawling with it. Don't worry, you're doing great. You're now officially a time pilgrim. You shuffle forward, sandals scuffing the dusty limestone, and stumble into something mind-bending. The Mayan calendar isn't a single system, it's a synchronized orchestra of cosmic gears. And one of those gears, the Tsoken, now links arms with another, the Hob. This calendar is a bit more familiar, it's 365 days long, like the solar year you know. Except the Mayans didn't bother with leap years. At all. And somehow, they still nailed the solar drift better than medieval Europe, which frankly was still debating whether bathing was a sin. You pause beneath a crumbling archway carved with intertwined serpents. The sun breaks through the canopy, casting light on a series of carved blocks, each representing one of the 18 Hob months. Each month was 20 days long. That's 360. Add 5 more, and you land on their version of a year. But those 5 were weird. They were called Wayeb, and nobody liked them. They were like the last 5 minutes of a boring Zoom call, tense, vaguely cursed, and full of eye contact with the unknown. During Wayeb, people wouldn't leave their homes. They wouldn't eat hot food. They might even unplug their obsidian mirrors, if those had power cords. Historians still argue whether this period was seen as dangerous because of astronomy, religion, or social anxiety. Honestly, all 3 seem valid. And still, despite lacking our modern leap year patch, the Mayans' calendar drifted less over time than the Julian calendar used by the Romans. Which begs the question, how did they do that? Did they secretly correct it over centuries using priestly observations? Did they just not care if solstices wandered off a bit? Or did they build time cycles that were self-correcting over long epochs? No one's quite sure. But you crouch now beside a mossy stela where a priest once scratched a jaguar-toothed stylus across bark paper, recalculating the position of Venus. That bright morning star wasn't just a pretty face, it was a calendar unto itself. Mayan timekeepers watched it obsessively, tracking its 584-day cycle across the sky. If Venus disappeared and reappeared at the wrong moment, harvests failed. Or worse, battles were lost. Venus was basically the Mayan version of your phone's battery indicator, ignore at your own peril. You keep moving and suddenly trip over a stone ring, an ancient calendar round. It's not for playing. It's for aligning. The Tsokin and Hob calendars intersected once every 52 years in a unique combination. This was known as the calendar round, and it was a big deal. Like, light the pyramids, sacrifice a turkey, and maybe an elite kind of deal. People would go into collective anxiety as this moment approached. What if the gods decided not to renew the world? What if the fire didn't light at the renewal ceremony? What if the cosmic software crashed and they lost all their saved progress? You imagine living in a society where everyone treats the new 52-year cycle like a firmware update for reality itself. You wouldn't just party, you'd pray the universe didn't get bricked. You hear a child's voice chant a date, 13 can, 2 pop. You have no idea what that means, but someone nearby nods solemnly, so you do too. The Mayan numeral system tickles your brain next. They use dots and bars to count, easy to carve, easy to add. A bar equals 5, a dot equals 1. You can count to 19 on your fingers, and then things get spicy. They used a vigesimal system, base 20. You realize that's probably because humans have 20 fingers and toes. You glance down at your sandals and do the math. It checks out. But here's the kicker, they didn't just count days. They named them. Each day in the Tsokin had a number from 1 to 13 and one of 20 sacred day names, like Ik, wind, can, seed, or Etznab, flint. The combination of those two gave the day its spiritual fingerprint. Birthdays weren't just June 5th. They were a cosmic horoscope. You were born under 12 Kawak, and that might mean you'll be a poet, or a priest, or tragically allergic to frogs. Historians still debate how deterministic these birth readings really were. Were people trapped in their day sign's prophecy? Or was it more like a personality quiz gone sacred? You hear drums now, slow, hollow, echoing. A ceremony is beginning. Timekeepers are gathered on a platform lined with flickering copal incense. They aren't just celebrating a date. They are the date. Their robes shimmer with jade, and they chant in syllables that rise and fall like breath itself. You crouch, respectful, as one raises his arms to the sky. No watches. No clocks. Just the confidence of a civilization that treated time as something you dance with, not conquer. And for a moment, the jungle holds its breath. One leaf falls. The sky does not. You wander away from the incense-thick ceremony, trying to process the overwhelming thought that these people, without leap years, without telescopes, and certainly without battery-powered anything, were more aligned with the heavens than most people with NASA live streams today. And yet, they didn't even have a leap day. That's the part that keeps tugging at your brain like a mosquito you can't swat. How did they keep everything in sync for centuries, without patching the calendar every 4 years like we do? Well, here's the sleepy twist, they didn't. At least, not the way we would expect. The Mayan Hob year had 365 days. It ignored the extra quarter day that modern calendars handle with leap years. So technically, yes, Their calendar did drift over centuries, but instead of fighting this drift, they folded it into the larger pattern of their long count, an enormous cyclical system that could span thousands, yes, thousands, of years. Imagine if your Google Calendar extended not just to next year's dentist appointment, but all the way to the year 4772. That's essentially how the long count worked. Historians still debate whether this drift was a flaw, a feature, or just not something they were particularly fussed about. Some suggest they were aware of it but chose to let the larger cycles absorb the slippage. Others argue that the Maya may have periodically recalibrated through ritual, realignment, or possibly even shifting agricultural festivals slightly to stay in tune with the seasons. Either way, the Mayans didn't panic when the sun showed up a day too early for a feast. Instead, they readjusted their rhythm like a band, letting the drummer take the lead for a bit. You're kind of impressed. You've met people who get upset when their phone updates overnight. Now you're seated on a stone bench outside a low-thatched observatory. Yes, observatory. There's no telescope here, but don't be fooled. This dome-shaped structure has slots and sight lines built to line up with solstices and planetary risings. One small slit in the wall allows sunlight to pierce the room exactly at noon on the summer solstice, lighting up a carved face on the far wall. That face? A sun god's. And he is very punctual. The Mayans also kept meticulous records of eclipses, not only when they happened, but when they were going to happen. Some tablets contain astronomical calculations so detailed that modern researchers had to double-check whether they were looking at pre-Columbian science or a misdated European insert. They weren't. The math was real. And it was ancient. You hear laughter now, children giggling as they race past you, wearing little jaguar masks. One pauses and stares at you solemnly before saying something that sounds like 10 Kimi. You assume that's today's soak-in date, or maybe a roast. It's hard to tell with kids. Still, that's the vibe here. Time isn't a box you shove events into. It's a language. It's poetic, circular, personal. You're not June 5th. You're 12 Lamad or 5 Ajah, names that carry rhythm and meaning in a cosmic tone that most modern calendars can only dream of. You pass a stone disc with concentric circles and realize this isn't just a calendar. It's a machine. Each ring spins independently, the 260 dates soak in, the 365-day Hob, the massive long count, the Venus cycle, the lunar phases. The whole system meshes together like celestial gears, clinking forward day by day with mathematical grace and eerie precision. And here's a little surprise. The Maya also recorded leap-like adjustments in some regional traditions, particularly in the post-classic period, after the height of the classic era. Some inscriptions suggest subtle recalibrations based on observations, suggesting that while they didn't have a leap day baked into the system, their astronomer priests may have occasionally nudged time back into alignment like a watchmaker flicking a gear into place. But those tweaks weren't standardized. They were performed. Rituals. Chants. Offerings. Time here wasn't corrected with math, it was healed with ceremony. Now you're sitting cross-legged beside an elderly scribe carving glyphs into a codex. The bark paper manuscript is being filled slowly, methodically. Each glyph glows in the torchlight, elegant as calligraphy and twice as mysterious. You can't read a single one, but somehow you feel their meaning. The curves aren't just writing, they're breathing. You sense that if you stare long enough, you might actually hear a calendar whisper. The scribe pauses, dips his stylus in dark ink, and murmurs about a comet expected next season. Not because he saw it yet, but because the stars have been hinting. You nod. You pretend this all makes sense. And maybe, in the slow jungle rhythm of it all, it does. You find yourself climbing a slow incline of stone steps, smoothed by centuries of bare feet. At the top, a narrow terrace opens up to a panoramic view of the forest canopy. The horizon is awash with golds and greens, stretching beyond the reach of your thoughts. And standing just beside you, their eyes half closed in concentration, is a timekeeper, not a priest exactly, not a politician, but something in between. A Kinab, keeper of days. The Kinab isn't worried about taxes or market prices or the weather. He's worried about timing, the rhythm of planting, the opening of ceremonial cycles, and making sure that no one schedules a war on a day meant for weaving. It's not that the Maya feared chaos. It's that they respected the order within it, and their timekeepers were the musicians of that cosmic symphony. This particular Kinab is muttering to himself. Numbers. Names. Glyphs. His voice is barely more than breath. His fingers move in invisible arithmetic across the air. He's tracking today, not with a clock, but by how the sun slants across a carving on a nearby pillar. The shadow is thin, exact. He nods. You get the sense that if he were to declare this not a good day to blink, everyone would just hold their eyes open in obedient terror. The timekeepers didn't just manage calendars. They managed fate. They told rulers when to ascend the throne, when to marry, when to launch an attack or cancel a sacrifice. Imagine your life decisions being filtered through a guy holding a shell and squinting at Jupiter. Historians still argue whether these roles were strictly religious or deeply political, or, more likely, a completely inseparable fusion of both. The timekeeper was not a passive observer of cycles. He was an agent in them. His voice could move armies. His silence could delay coronations. His mistake could doom an entire harvest. Which explains why they took this job so seriously. Timekeepers trained for years. They studied codices, memorized alignments, learned the dance of the moon's phases. They didn't just know how to count days, they knew how to interpret their flavor. 2 days could look identical on the surface, but one might be hot and the other cold. One might invite love, another, revenge. You feel suddenly very inadequate. You once rescheduled a dentist appointment because Mercury was in retrograde. These people aligned entire civilizations with nothing but math, myth, and moonlight. A young apprentice approaches the kinab and hands him a painted shell. It's not a gift. It's an offering of data, a record of weather patterns, rainfall, possibly even omens. The shell is covered in glyphs and stains, like a cosmic sticky note. The elder turns it in his hand, then raises an eyebrow. You don't speak Yucatec Maya, but you swear the look translates to yikes. This is how knowledge moved here, orally, ritually, physically. Calendrical information wasn't stored in dusty archives. It was worn on the body, danced into memory, chanted into the bones of young acolytes until they could dream the sequence of days without blinking. You're led now into a chamber whose walls shimmer with pigment and time. Murals stretch from floor to ceiling, showing festivals, star maps, and scenes of timekeepers with wide eyes and elegant headdresses. One mural shows a kinab placing a jade pendant around the neck of a king. In the background, a glyph glows like a neon sign. It's a specific day in the long count. That day determined everything. No pressure. Of course, not all timekeepers were serene, incense-wafting sages. Some were political power players. Some manipulated time readings to favor their patrons. If a war was brewing, and the omens said wait, a particularly ambitious kinab might fudge a glyph or two to say charge. The line between divine timing and strategic lying was thinner than the reed they wrote with. One thing that remained constant, though, was the sense of cosmic accountability. These men weren't just watching the skies for kicks. They believed misreading time could unbalance the universe. Entire temples were constructed to recalibrate the calendar, like pressing sync on a divine app. But instead of code, they used geometry and incense. You lean against a cool stone column and close your eyes. You imagine living that way, not by alarm clock or phone calendar, but by the whisper of the wind, the arc of the stars, the mood of the day itself. Would you be more at peace? Or constantly anxious that your entire vibe was cosmically off? A hawk cries somewhere above. The jungle breathes around you. And the timekeeper, still murmuring beside you, adjusts his stance slightly. The sun has moved. The moment has passed. Another day begins, right on time. You descend from the terrace slowly, your steps echoing off the narrow stone steps as the jungle grows louder again, bird calls looping like a tape, monkeys screaming their unsolicited opinions. But your ears catch something softer now, the scratch of stylus on stone. You follow it until you come to a courtyard where a circle of timekeepers is gathered, each hunched over a slab of bark paper or a slab of limestone, inscribing numbers and symbols with terrifying precision. They're not doodling. They're tracking celestial events, and your arrival coincides with one of their most prized endeavors, eclipse prediction. You slide down beside a younger scribe, maybe 16, with eyes that have seen more stars than sleep. He's explaining to a child how eclipses aren't cosmic accidents, they're calculated. The Mayans used something called the Dresden Codex, a book that looks like an accordion and smells like ancient secrets. In it, they tracked solar and lunar eclipses with such accuracy that modern astronomers still gape. These weren't just guesses. These were series-based cycles, refined over centuries by observing, correcting, and anticipating the patterns of shadow and light. You glance at the glyph he's copying. It looks like a lizard doing algebra, but it represents a nodal cycle, marking the invisible points where the moon's path crosses the sun's. The Maya knew these spots were danger zones, the only places where eclipses could occur. They marked them on calendar wheels and carved them into monuments, warning future generations, look up, but maybe wear protection. Historians still debate whether eclipse predictions were used primarily for farming, politics, or fear management. One popular theory? A well-timed eclipse, predicted down to the day, could validate a ruler's divine connection. Picture a king saying, "Behold, I darken the sky," as everyone collectively gasps and agrees to pay their taxes. Your scribe friend snorts and mutters that they didn't need taxes, they had cacao beans and fear. He isn't wrong. Time was currency. Whoever controlled it, ruled. But unlike modern bureaucracies, these timekeepers wielded astronomy like sacred poetry. They weren't just calculating, they were participating. One of the elder timekeepers nearby lifts a shadow staff, a simple stick used to measure the angle of sunlight. He places it upright in a stone socket. The shadow stretches across the dusty courtyard and touches the edge of a spiral glyph etched into the stone floor. That glyph? A Venus station. You kneel beside the stone, mesmerized. The Mayans were obsessed with Venus. They tracked it with meticulous attention. Its synodic period of 584 days was inscribed across temples. They knew exactly when it would rise before the sun, vanish behind it, reappear at dusk, and disappear again. Each stage was infused with significance. War, for instance, often started when Venus was rising as the morning star. Coincidence? Not according to the codices. Venus was temperamental, full of omens. The timekeepers read its behavior like a mood ring for the gods. There's a debate, of course. Some scholars argue Venus tracking was more religious symbolism than strict astronomy. Others point out that Mayan Venus tables were more precise than European models until the late 1500s. So, symbolism and science? That's kind of their thing. As you rise to your feet, you pass a corner of the courtyard where glyphs are carved into the wall with a different purpose. These aren't predictions. They're retrospectives, records of what happened on which day, sometimes with emotional color coded into the symbols. A solar eclipse might be accompanied by a note of famine, or a victory in war, or the death of a prince. Time, in the Mayan worldview, wasn't a flat road. It was textured. Days weren't just Thursday or Monday. They were living, reactive entities. One day might hold mischief, another, healing. And some rare days were so potent that timekeepers might warn people not to speak loudly, or not to leave their homes, or, occasionally, not to breathe too deep. Imagine living like that. Not just marking time, but respecting it like a moody deity. A bell made from conch shell rings somewhere across the plaza. It's not to announce the hour, it's a reminder. A ritual is beginning to mark a solar event, possibly a zenith passage, when the sun is directly overhead and casts no shadow. These were rare days, sacred in cities near the equator. You follow the crowd to a raised platform where offerings are being laid out, maize, jade beads, and a small obsidian knife, strictly ceremonial today, you hope. A timekeeper steps forward and begins chanting. The sun blazes directly overhead, and for a few minutes, everything is eerily shadowless. It feels like time has paused, or folded, or maybe just winked. Then it passes. The sun slants again. People exhale. The ceremony ends. And you realize you've just seen something that happens only twice a year in this part of the world, a moment so precise that even your smartwatch would hesitate. You drift through the humid haze of early afternoon, your sandals flopping softly against the stone. Somewhere behind you, parrots argue in a language no one's bothered to translate, and ahead of you rises a tower of glyphs, an ancient staircase not just meant for walking, but for reading. Each step carved with date after date, name after name, turning the very architecture into a timeline. This is where the Mayan obsession with overlapping calendars begins to flex. Because up until now, you've only been juggling two, the 260-day Sokin and the 365-day Hob. Together, they make up the calendar round. But here, on this staircase, on these stones, you see the emergence of the long count. It's their heavy hitter, their cosmic ledger. The long count is not for casual timekeeping. It doesn't say, buy more corn this week. It says, on this date, 400 years ago, a god's eyelid trembled. It's a linear calendar in a world obsessed with circles, which makes it a little rebellious, and kind of poetic. So how does it work? Deep breath. It uses a base 20 and base 18 system, counting days since a mythic creation date around 3114 BCE. Dates are written as 5 place numerals: Bacton, Katun, Tun, Unal, and Kin. That's 144,000 days, 7,200 days, 360 days, 20 days, and 1 day respectively. Confused? Same. But trust me, it's elegant. One glyph here might read 9.12.2.0.16. That's not your Wi-Fi password. It's the exact date of a royal ascension, or a celestial event, or the day someone drowned of fire and claimed it came from the moon. Historians still debate whether these dates were seen as historical facts or as cosmic poetry. Were they documenting reality or choreographing myth? Did the events happen because they were written, or were they written to make them happen? The truth is, both. Mayan time wasn't just a framework. It was interactive. It responded to belief, to ritual, to memory. Time was less what happened and more what we all agreed was too sacred not to happen. You climb those steps slowly now, your fingers brushing glyphs warm from the sun. One symbol repeats, a stylized face, lips curled slightly, eyes half-lidded. You ask someone what it means, and they whisper, Ajah. It means lord or ruler. But also, sometimes, son. The boundary blurs. A good king embodied time itself. A bad king disrupted it. From this height, you can see the city's symmetry. Temples and pyramids aligned with solstice sunrises. Ball courts that echo with a clap. Markets arranged according to sacred numbers. This isn't just urban planning. It's chrono-architecture, a city built not only to house people, but to track the movement of stars. The wind changes slightly, and with it comes the faint sound of chanting. Down in the plaza, a ceremony is unfolding. But this one's different. It's quieter, more focus. A few elders stand in a circle, each holding a polished obsidian disc. Light from the sun catches one just right, sending a flash into your eyes. You blink. Then you realize, they're not looking at time, they're reflecting it. This ritual is called sighting the Yunal, a 20-day cycle. Each Yunal has its own personality, its own texture. This one is Kankin, associated with yellow, with decay, with preparation. Not necessarily bad, just honest. You're halfway through a cycle. You're supposed to reflect. So you do. You think back on the many calendars already spinning in your head. The way that Sokin zigs while the hob zags. The long count ticking like a 1,000-year grandfather clock in the background. Venus doing its dramatic entrances and exits. The moon, peeking in every 29.5 days like a nosy neighbor. And now, Yunals, quietly flowing beneath it all like a secret tide. You sit for a moment beside a weathered stela and try to hold it all in your mind. The cycles. The overlaps. The sheer, relentless structure of it all. It's exhausting. And beautiful. A child runs past and calls out, 12 EB. Today's Sokin date. You repeat it softly to yourself, committing it to memory like a mantra. You're not sure what 12 EB means. Maybe you'll dream of it later. And now, as the light slants longer in the shadow of the Temple of the Sun begins to stretch across the plaza like a lazy cat, something strange happens. You stop thinking about time. And you start feeling it. You wake from your reverie under the gentle press of humidity, like time itself is wrapping you in a damp cotton shawl. Somewhere a drum beats slow and steady. 1, 2, pause, 1, 2. It's not music, it's a message. A transition. Something is changing. You're drawn toward a courtyard surrounded by low walls etched with glyphs. People move with purpose, some carrying bundles of herbs, others balancing painted bowls atop their heads. You've stumbled into the beginning of what the Maya called a recalibration. Not the fixing of broken clocks, but the realigning of cosmic cycles. And they take this very seriously. These recalibration ceremonies didn't happen every week. They were rare moments when the long count, Sokin, and Hob realigned, or when Venus reappeared, or when Katun ended. Picture it like a cosmic software update, but instead of a Remind Me Tomorrow button, you get fire rituals, cornmeal offerings, and the serious chance of someone getting a new tattoo from a priest. You're invited to sit beside the central altar, a flat stone ringed with feathers and cacao beans. A timekeeper leans over it, lighting copal incense that smells like pine and slow-burning dreams. Around you, others murmur, cleansing their hands with smoke. One woman sprinkles maize flour in a spiral, tracing it with her fingers. She's not decorating. She's invoking. Then, from behind the altar, a man in a cloak of quetzal feathers steps forward. He holds a clay bowl filled with embers, and begins to chant, not loud, but low. The sound vibrates your ribs. This is not a performance. This is maintenance. Like oiling the gears of a 1,000-year-old watch. This is the journal ceremony, a recalibration rite marking the end of a 360-day period in the long count. It's one of the smaller gears in the cosmic machine, but still crucial. Let a few of these slip, and the whole celestial timetable could drift like a canoe without a paddle. Historians still debate whether these rituals were astronomical in origin or primarily spiritual. But the two weren't separate for the Maya. Observing the stars and offering burnt cacao were both ways of touching the divine. The chanting continues, each line punctuated by the sharp clack of a conch shell being tapped against stone. You flinch the first few times. Then your body starts sinking to it, like it's a heartbeat. And then it happens. The head timekeeper raises a painted codex. Everyone bows slightly, even the birds in the trees seem to hush. He reads the recalibrated count aloud, 8 a jaw, 3 axkin, ton 12. The numbers don't mean much to you, but the way the crowd exhales tells you everything. The universe is, once again, in balance. You find this all equal parts overwhelming and comforting. You've seen leap seconds added to the atomic clock, sure. You've read articles about how Earth's rotation is slightly slowing down. But no one's ever lit incense or played drums for it. No one's ever offered gratitude to the sky for letting us stay on schedule. The Maya didn't fear these recalibrations. They welcomed them. They were part of a living system, adjustments that kept the divine machine humming. Like tuning an instrument before playing a sacred psalm. You move to the edge of the plaza and sit near a pool of still water, watching the sky darken to the color of deep moss. The ceremony ends not with a cheer, but with silence. It lingers like a note held just past its natural end. And you realize something, the recalibration wasn't just for the calendar. It was for the people. A moment to reset, realign, remember where they were in the song of the cosmos. Maybe we need that too. You lie back and look at the stars just starting to wink through the canopy. Venus is already there, bright and smug. You whisper the new count to yourself, 8 a jaw, 3 axkin, and wonder what that means for you. Probably nothing. Possibly everything. The moon rises slow and heavy, like a glowing stone being pulled up through silk. You've left the ceremony behind, following a narrow path lit only by flickering torches. It winds between low buildings and then opens into a courtyard you hadn't seen before. It's quiet here, but not empty. At the center stands a stone platform, not a temple, not quite a stage. More like a pause carved from limestone. This is where the Maya celebrated something so strange it still confuses scholars and defies calendars. It's called the Day Out of Time. It happens once every solar year, right after the last day of the Hobbs' 18th month and before the beginning of the next. 5 extra days, tacked on like an afterthought, but loaded with tension. These are the Wayab, and this platform is where people came to greet them. Or survive them. The Wayab weren't ordinary days. They were part of any month. They had no governor gods assigned to them, no divine personality to watch over events. To the Maya, that made them dangerous. Unsupervised. Like leaving your front door open during a full moon and hoping the wind doesn't steal your soul. You sit at the edge of the platform, watching as a few brave souls come forward, heads bowed, carrying bundles of herbs and beads. One lays a small, painted skull at the platform's center. Not a real one, just ceramic, glazed in blue. A symbol. A reminder. Historians still argue what exactly the Maya believed could happen during these liminal days. Some texts suggest spirits roam more freely. Others say people avoided cooking, bathing, or even speaking unnecessarily. Some would sleep facing the wall. No jokes, no dancing, no eye contact with Venus if it showed up uninvited. But despite the fear, there's also something oddly hopeful about this pause in time. A moment when you weren't bound to anything, not a day sign, not a duty, not a divine narrative. It was an interlude in the cosmic psalm. Unstructured. Unclaimed. And so, some communities didn't just hide during Wayab. They celebrated. Quietly. Respectfully. They gathered under stars, lit fires, and played music for the gods who might be watching, or for no one at all. Tonight, that's what you see. A slow drum begins again. A different rhythm this time, less ceremonial, more like a lullaby. A man with a jaguar tattoo on his shoulder starts humming a tune that doesn't seem to end. A few children circle a low fire, tossing in petals and watching them crumple in the heat. An old woman waves smoke over a bowl of salt and murmurs, not a prayer, but maybe a memory. You ask someone what this particular night is called, and she smiles without answering. Not evasively, just peacefully. Some things, she suggests with a shrug, aren't meant to be pinned down by names. The timekeepers do not attend this gathering. Not officially. This isn't about counting. It's about uncounting. About acknowledging the places where the cycles fray at the edges. Where order gives way to possibility. You lean back on your elbows and watch the stars again. Orion tilts above you. The Pleiades shimmer nearby like spilled cornmeal. You start to understand why the Maya treated the sky not as decoration but as script, a message system etched in motion. But tonight, the script pauses. One man raises a clay cup and pours its contents into the fire. The flames hiss, briefly change color, then settle. No one claps. No one speaks. This is the gap in the gears of time. The crack between counts. A moment not erased, but respected. And you're starting to think we could use more of those. You breathe in the cool, flower-scented air and exhale the pressure of linear thinking. There is no schedule now. No deadline. Just breath. And stars. And a handful of strangers treating silence like something sacred. Time doesn't always have to move forward. Sometimes, it just has to pause. Morning light creeps into the courtyard like a soft-footed cat, golden and warm against the stone. You rise slowly, brushing sleep from your eyes and loose petals from your clothes. Around you, the world is beginning again. But it's different somehow, looser at the edges, like something ancient just exhaled. You wander back through quiet alleys toward the temple complex, where a group of timekeepers is gathered around a small fire pit. They're dressed in their ceremonial best, feathers, jade, and long embroidered cloaks that shimmer like the sky just before a storm. Today is a special day. A realignment is happening. No, not with the moon or the stars. With the long count calendar itself. This isn't a common event. It only happens when the count rolls over a significant digit, like moving from one Khatun to another. A Khatun is 7,200 days, or just under 20 years. Not a small commitment. And when one ends, the Maya don't just update their calendars, they burn them. You're brought closer by an apprentice, who hands you a folded sheet of bark paper, worn soft from handling. It's blank. You realize it's symbolic. The past is being released. The new cycle is ready to be written. At the center of the group, an elder steps forward. His face is a map of time, wrinkled, sun-touched, unreadable unless you know the language of years. He holds a small ceremonial flint blade, not to harm, but to mark the transition. With slow, reverent movements, he slices through a string binding a bundle of old codices, records of the last Khatun. Nothing official, maybe. Just notes. Warnings. Hopes. Then they're placed, one by one, into the fire. The flames consume the pages, curling them into black petals. Smoke rises, fragrant and dense. The crowd watches silently. You get the feeling this isn't about mourning the past. It's about making room for the next layer. This kind of recalibration wasn't just spiritual. It had administrative consequences. New leaders might be installed. Farmers might adjust planting schedules. Artists would begin fresh mural cycles. The entire society gently shifted forward, like a snake shedding its skin, not because it was damaged, but because it had simply outgrown its last pattern. Historians still argue how rigid these transitions were. Did every city mark them the same way? Were some timekeepers stricter, others more poetic? Evidence suggests that local traditions varied, and that some cities may have skipped or delayed rituals due to politics, drought, or other cosmic inconveniences. You glance down at your own fingers, still faintly smudged with ash. You've participated, however lightly, in something deeply old. Something that might have outlasted the people who invented it. Suddenly, there's movement near the edge of the courtyard. A boy, barely 10, steps forward and kneels beside the fire. He holds up a small object, a miniature calendar wheel, carved from bone, strung on a leather cord. The crowd quiets again. This is a symbolic passing. The boy is the apprentice to one of the elder timekeepers, and today he is accepting the new count. A small shift in number, just one tick forward, but a massive shift in responsibility. He repeats the new date, Voice clear. 1 can, 0 pop, Katun 9. It sounds like a riddle. It is a riddle. Time here isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. Every cycle that ends is a return, and every return is new. You leave the courtyard with a quiet heart, following the boy's voice as it fades behind you. Around the city, life is adjusting. Vendors sweep stalls. Priests replace banners. A woman paints fresh glyphs on the corner of her home, blessing it for the new era. And you? You're beginning to feel the weight of time, not as a burden, but as a textured garment. Worn, woven, familiar. The Maya didn't fear the passage of days. They wore time like skin. And today, the whole world has shed one. You follow a procession now, slow-moving and solemn, toward the edge of the city. People carry flowers, feathers, bundles of maize, and a strange energy that hums beneath their silence. This isn't mourning. This is reverence. Today marks something sacred in the calendar. Not God's birthday, not a coronation. It's nothing. Literally, it's a day that doesn't quite belong. This is the day out of time, again. But this time, not the way of. This is something rarer. A day that exists because of ceremony, not calendar. A day added, not by astronomy, but by intention. You're led to a clearing surrounded by carved stelae, their faces smoothed by centuries of rain and retelling. At the center, a small platform rises, and upon it sits a bundle wrapped in crimson cloth. The cloth is opened slowly, revealing a circular tablet carved with spirals and flame-like glyphs. The crowd inhales. This is an inserted day, a ceremonial placeholder. A rare decision made by timekeepers when cosmic and social patterns feel misaligned. Instead of recalculating all cycles, they simply add a breath. A blink. A buffer day. You are, effectively, standing in sacred lag time. Historians still debate how often this occurred. Some believe it was symbolic only, used in specific cities to delay or enhance major events. Others argue it was a system-wide pause, agreed upon by neighboring polities. No record explains it perfectly, but here, under this slow-turning sun, no one seems confused. An elder steps forward and places a woven mat beside the platform. Mats are important here, symbols of rulership, of decisions, of the moment when words become time. He sits, places both hands on the tablet, and closes his eyes. The rest of the gathering lowers themselves to the ground. No one speaks. For a full 13 minutes. This is a ritual of intentional emptiness. You feel yourself slide into it, not like falling, but like sinking gently into warm water. A day without glyphs. A day outside that soak in, beyond the hob, slipping between long count digits like a thread through the hem of time. The Maya didn't fear this emptiness. They honored it. Because time wasn't just a schedule, it was a living force, and like all living things, it needed rest. You wonder what would happen if your own world had days like this, quiet, optional days where nothing was owed, nothing was due, and the only task was being. A strange thought in a culture that fears wasted time. Here, though, time isn't wasted. It's replanted. When the silence ends, there is no applause, no speech. People rise slowly. Some touch the tablet before leaving. Others bow to the mat. One man leaves a small figurine, a monkey carved from clay, at the base of the platform. Perhaps as a joke. Perhaps as a reminder that even stillness has playfulness hiding inside it. The sun now filters through the trees like melted copper. You find a flat stone and sit for a while. Around you, time resumes. But it feels calmer. Like it had a nap in a glass of cold water. You watch a leaf fall on a lazy zigzag. No one chases it. It lands exactly where it was supposed to. You're beginning to understand the deeper magic of the Mayan system. It wasn't just about precision, it was about permission. Permission to pause. To honor the offbeat. To sit in a day that didn't demand productivity, but presence. And honestly, that might be the most radical concept of all. You return to the city center as the last orange slices of sunlight disappear behind the jungle horizon. The shadows grow long, but the walls are still alive, buzzing with glyphs. These aren't just records or numbers. They're stories, written in the bones of the stone. And if you squint just right, they almost seem to smirk. Tonight, you're learning a different side of the Mayan calendar, its attitude. See, the Maya didn't just mark time with reverence. They also did it with style. And sometimes, with shade. Turns out, their calendar glyphs could carry political commentary, local gossip, and the occasional not-so-subtle dig at a rival city. You're standing now before a wall of inscriptions from a site like Kalakmul or Köpen, places known not only for their astronomical brilliance but for their dramatic flair. One carved panel reads something like, "The great lord of Tikal rose with the star, but fell before noon." Sounds poetic? Sure. But what it really means is, he got up early and still lost. That's not just storytelling. That's chronological roasting. Scholars still debate how much of this glyphic language was symbolic metaphor, how much was blunt trash talk, and how much was meant to serve both gods and gossip. The consensus leans toward, yes. The Maya calendar didn't merely record this happened. It framed events through layered meanings, spiritual timing, and public opinion. If your city defeated another in battle, that soak-in date it happened unmattered. Was it a knife day? A storm day? A day when your god outranked theirs? That's not just data, that's divine PR. And the writers of these glyphs, often scribes and timekeepers with elite training, knew exactly what they were doing. These weren't dry bureaucrats. These were elite cosmic narrators, spinning victory, defeat, and diplomacy into eternal poetry. You pass another stela with the face of a ruler carved in dramatic profile. He's holding a scepter shaped like a snake, and above his head is a date, 5 a jaw, 13 pop. The glyph beside it shows a turtle with smoke rising from its shell. Depending on interpretation, it could mean a time of restoration or the exact moment his rival tripped over destiny and landed on his face. The Maya were masters of multi-layered timespeak. It wasn't just events they tracked, it was mood. And calendar glyphs became their emojis, their hashtags, their carefully worded subtext. A single symbol might mean new moon and opportunity, and don't trust your cousin all in one elegant swirl. You overhear a timekeeper explaining a particular date to a young girl. This was the day your great-grandmother was born. It was a Ninak, a wind day. That's why she never sat still. The girl giggles and runs off, arms outstretched like a breeze. You smile. Even now, personality lives in the glyphs. Nearby, another elder speaks to a traveler, pointing at the long count on a temple stair. Here, he says, tapping a glyph, was the day our people reclaimed this city after the drought. You see the maize sprout beside the rain cloud? That's no accident. The traveler looks confused. But how do you know it really happened on that exact day? The elder just smiles. Because we made sure it did. That's the thing with Mayan time, it was never just about what happened. It was about what should happen. Timekeepers didn't just observe history. They choreographed it. And in a world where each day had a personality, where glyphs held jokes, prayers, and warnings, time wasn't neutral. It had a voice. Sometimes quiet, sometimes sarcastic, but always meaningful. You sit again, tracing a glyph with your finger, spiral, bar, claw. You don't know what it says. Not really. But it feels like it's saying, don't take time too seriously. But don't waste it either. You lean back against the stone. You feel the years hum beneath your spine. Somewhere, a bird laughs. Maybe at you. You wake to warmth on your face, not the harsh smack of modern sunlight through a bedroom window, but the gentle weight of time itself. The morning air smells like damp stone and crushed herbs, and for once, you have no idea what hour it is. There are no clocks here. Just shadows. Today, you learn how the Maya watched the world move using the most primitive, elegant, and hauntingly accurate method of all, light and shadow. You walk toward a structure that looks unfinished. Just a circular mound of stone with a pole at the center. But as the sun climbs, you notice something. The pole's shadow stretches across a series of carefully placed stone markers. Each one represents a position of the shadow at a particular solar event, solstices, equinoxes, zenith days. This, you realize, is not a ruin. It's a timepiece. A gnomon, if you want to be technical. But don't worry about that. The Maya wouldn't call it that. They'd just say it told them when to plant, when to burn, when to honor the gods, and when to sit down and take a breath. This method of tracking time, sometimes called a shadow clock, was common, elegant, and wonderfully low-tech. Just sun and stone. You watch a timekeeper trace the edge of the shadow with a bit of red dye, murmuring the current position like he's calling out a score in some ancient game. You ask, tentatively, how accurate it is. He grins. More accurate than a tired priest in a cloudy night. And he's right. Long before mechanical time, this was how they lived, by the light that moved. The city was a sundial, and the priests were the hands. Nearby, You notice a staircase with serpents carved into the balustrades. The guide tells you that during the spring and fall equinoxes, shadows fall just right to make it look like the serpent is slithering down the steps. You nod, pretending not to be awestruck. But honestly, that's better than any Apple Watch face you've seen. Historians still argue whether these alignments were intentional or a happy accident. Were the architects really that good? Or did later interpretations layer in the symbolism? Either way, you can't deny the effect. The serpent shadow happens like clockwork, or better, like cosmos work. You take a seat on the ground, back against a warm slab of limestone, and look at the way the sun carves its way across the plaza. Every stone here was placed with awareness. Every wall casts a message. The shadows don't just fall, they speak. A timekeeper joins you, carrying what looks like a bowl of black water. You realize it's polished obsidian, used not just as a mirror, but to track the stars. At night, they'd hold the obsidian at a certain angle and wait for reflections of key stars or the planet Venus. Even the moon's phases could be observed this way, bouncing softly in the bowl like a ghost of itself. Again, you're stunned. No satellites. No equations. Just reflection and patience. You think of modern time as something cold and sliced into digits. But here, time is fluid, and the tools to see it are beautiful. And yet, as the sun reaches its peak, you begin to notice something else: silence. People speak less. Children play in the shade. Even the birds seem to quiet. This is a zenith day, one of the rare days when the sun passes directly overhead and casts no shadow at all. It's both unsettling and sublime. Nothing to measure. No lines on the ground. Just raw, unfiltered light. The Maya saw zenith days as powerful, sacred. A moment of cosmic neutrality, when duality disappears. No left, no right, no up, no down. Just presence. You look down and confirm, your shadow is gone. And it feels like your edges have disappeared too. You drift away from the zenith courtyard in a daze, your body still tingling from the eerie lightlessness of shadowless noon. There's something disorienting about having no shadow. It's like being erased, gently. But now, as the sun slides down toward the west and your shape reappears beneath you, you start to feel anchored again. And just in time. You're about to meet someone who saw time not only pass, but lay down beneath him. They take you to a temple. Not the tallest one, this one's squat, rectangular, almost discreet. But inside, it holds one of the most astonishing Mayan creations ever carved in stone, the sarcophagus lid of Pakal the Great. Pakal wasn't just any ruler, he was the time king of Palenque. Reigning for nearly 70 years, he became a living embodiment of the calendar, his milestones inscribed meticulously into temple walls, steps, and bones. And here, beneath this massive carved stone, he lies in a tomb not just of death, but of cosmic alignment. You descend the narrow stairwell into the temple of the inscriptions. The air gets cooler, wetter. Your fingers trail along walls still echoing with carved glyphs. And then you reach it. The tomb. There, beneath your feet, under layers of history and offerings, rests Pakal's jade-covered body, lying in perfect harmony with a stone slab that shows something astonishing. At first glance, it looks like Pakal is falling backward into the underworld, arms and legs limp, mouth open, beneath a world tree that sprouts from a cosmic monster's jaws. But the more you look, the more it becomes something else. Is he falling? Or ascending? Is the tree growing from him, or lifting him toward the stars? Historians still argue whether the lid represents Pakal's death, his deification, or his passage through celestial realms. Some say he's climbing the Milky Way, positioned to match celestial movements on the day of his burial. Others whisper about the precise astronomical angles carved into the imagery, noting how certain stars would have been visible through the temple's doorway that night. And then there's the fringe theory crowd, who look at the lid and see something else entirely, a man in a spaceship, hands on levers, surrounded by flames and exhaust. You raise an eyebrow. It's a reach. But also, not boring. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain, Pakal's tomb is a calendar. Not just metaphorically. The inscriptions on the temple walls track his birth, his reign, his death, and even project his legacy into future cartoons. One panel mentions a ritual anniversary meant to occur 4,000 years after his death. That's right, he left instructions for a party in the year 4772. Talk about calendar confidence. You imagine being buried not with memories, but with an itinerary for the next 5 millennia. Pickle didn't just want to be remembered, he wanted to be integrated into the gears of time itself. His death wasn't the end of a count. It was the start of a new one. You returned to the surface slowly, eyes blinking against the sun, trying to hold the shape of that lid in your mind. The world tree. The celestial dragon. The man poised somewhere between descent and ascent. A calendar made not of pages, but of posture. And you wonder, how many lives have passed through this city, under this sky, mapped not by clocks, but by presence? By the way a man lies in stone, and the stars that marked his final breath? You walk back toward the plaza. Somewhere, a conch shell sounds. A new ritual begins. You glance over your shoulder one last time at the Temple of the Inscriptions. And now, without being told, you feel it. You're not watching history anymore. You're inside it. You head east now, where the air feels somehow older, thinner, but not in a tired way. More like it's been used many times and is now carrying whispers of precise footsteps. Before you is a staircase, wide, steep, flanked by stone balustrades carved with patterns of serpents, maize stalks, and time itself. This is no ordinary climb. This is a temple built to measure the sky. The structure looms above you, its corners aligned not for aesthetics but for solstices. You place a hand on the first step and begin climbing, each stone slightly higher than expected, each echo beneath your feet like a tick in some cosmic metronome. Halfway up, you pause to catch your breath and glance back. The shadow of the temple stretches perfectly along a causeway. It's not coincidence. This temple is designed so that, twice a year, on the spring and fall equinoxes, the setting sun casts shadows on the stairway in the shape of a serpent slithering downward. A trick of light. A triumph of geometry. A reminder that, here, even snakes obey calendars. You climb higher. Your legs burn, but it feels sacred. You're stepping through an equation built in stone. And as you reach the top platform, you're not just higher, you're aligned. The Maya understood that a building could be more than a shelter. It could be a calendar made solid. The 4 staircases on this temple, 91 steps each, plus the platform equals 365. One for each day of the solar year. That's not just symmetry. That's sovereignty over the seasons. Historians still debate whether all these alignments were intentional or retrospectively ascribed. Some say the symbolism was embedded from the start. Others believe the meanings accumulated over centuries like dust on stone. But even skeptics admit, the accuracy is uncanny. From the top of the temple, you can see how the city radiates in all directions. Temples, plazas, ball courts, each angled not for ease, but for celestial choreography. The city wasn't just placed. It was plotted. And you're standing at the heart of it. As the sun lowers in the sky, a timekeeper appears beside you. He carries a bundle of sticks and string, which he begins arranging in careful patterns on the stone. At first, it looks like art, then geometry, then something else. He's making a shadow map, a temporary replica of the sky's movement on the ground. The shape matches the angles of the temple's corners. The strings vibrate in the breeze, softly humming like tuned chords. You realize, this is a manual calendar reset. No gears. No batteries. Just stone, sun, string, and human attention. You ask how long he'll sit there. He shrugs. Until the shadow reaches the 3rd glyph. You squint at the floor. 3 glyphs are carved into the platform, worn smooth by centuries of barefoot reverence. He's waiting for the shadow of the western balustrade to kiss the 3rd one. Not an alarm. Not a notification. A cosmic whisper. The glyph finally darkens. The timekeeper nods. He unties the string bundle and packs it away. His job here is done. You stand in silence a little longer. The sun now hangs just above the horizon, swollen and orange, ready to fall. You sit on the edge of the platform, feet dangling over a view untouched by skyscrapers or traffic. The jungle pulses quietly, like the background hum of a sleeping giant. This isn't nostalgia. This isn't tourism. This is alignment. In modern life, we use watches to measure time. Here, they used architecture. You didn't have to check the calendar. You could stand inside it. As dusk bleeds into purple, you think about all the people who climbed these steps before you. Priests, farmers, astronomers, children chasing sunbeams. All of them measuring time with their bodies, their footsteps, their silence. And for a fleeting second, you swear you feel the temple breathe. Darkness has fallen completely now, and you're walking by starlight. Not in the poetic sense, actual starlight. No street lamps. No electric flickers. Just the kind of black sky where you can see your shadow in moon gray and your breath feels borrowed from the past. Tonight, you're chasing the most infamous number in Mayan calendrics. The one that set modern tongues wagging and doomsday preppers hoarding canned beans. Yes, 2012. You arrive at a plaza where a group of people, some locals, some wide-eyed travelers like you, are sitting around a fire, passing around a cup of balch, a honey-fermented drink with notes of bark, smoke, and ancient gossip. One man raises his voice over the crackle and asks the group, "So, did the world end or not?" Laughter follows. Someone clinks their clay cup and mutters, "Only the boring parts." See, in Mayan timekeeping, 2012 wasn't the end of the world. It was the end of a Bacton, the 13th one, to be precise. That's a cycle of 144,000 days. When it resets, the calendar rolls back to 0.0.0.0.0 and starts again. Kind of like your odometer flipping from 99,999 back to 00000. Not a crash, just a cosmic refresh. But thanks to a poorly translated stela from Tortuguero and a few overzealous New Age authors, this date became associated with apocalypse. People expected volcanoes, planets colliding, mass awakenings, or at least a sail on portable bunkers. The Maya? They were like, "It's a Tuesday." You sip your drink and listen as a timekeeper explains the actual inscription. It marks the date as significant. Not final. Something important might happen, but no fire from the sky. No cosmic off switch. Historians still debate the full meaning. Some say it was a political metaphor, a reminder of divine cycles. Others think it was a big celestial birthday for a god whose name has now faded into smoke. But what's clear is this: nothing ended. Or, more precisely, something reset. You remember now how the long count was designed to reach into the far future. It didn't fear large numbers. It embraced them. There are inscriptions planning events thousands of years ahead. The Maya weren't counting down. They were counting through. And here's the real twist: the 13th Bacton ending wasn't unique. Bactons come and go, just like weeks or months. This one got special treatment because modern people forgot the Maya believed in infinite cycles, not doomsday deadlines. You ask the fire circle what they were doing on December 21st, 2012. One woman says she was meditating in a cenote. Another says he threw a party called Welcome to the Next Cycle and served tortillas shaped like clocks. You smile. You remember reading about it. News anchors reporting from Mayan ruins. People crying, dancing, predicting disaster. Meanwhile, in many villages here, elders performed simple Thanksgiving ceremonies, offering maize and flowers to mark the turning of the Caton wheel. Nothing collapsed. Except a few tourist expectations. The fire pops and a boy points to the sky. "Venus," he says. And there it is again, your old friend, glimmering near the horizon. The Mayan obsession with this planet runs deep, and it's no accident that it features in many calendar cycles. Venus was the clockwork companion to every prophecy. You lean back on your elbows, watching the stars shift. Above you, Orion's belt cuts a clean line across the night. To the Maya, this wasn't just a constellation. It was part of a cosmic hearth, a fire in the sky. You wonder how many Bactons it's watched burn and reset. And in this moment, you get it. The 2012 panic wasn't a mistake. It was a misunderstanding. The Maya never predicted an end. They promised continuation. Renewal. A fresh count. Like breathing in after holding your breath just a little too long. The fire's low now. People begin to drift away. But you stay. Because tonight, you're not afraid of endings. You're just curious about what begins next. The next morning, the sun finds you already awake, perched on a worn stone wall near a small chapel-like structure. It's not ancient, at least not in the Mayan sense. Whitewashed. Wooden beams. A humble cross above the door. This is not a temple, it's a church. And it smells like two calendars in conflict. You're in the part of the story no one really likes to dwell on, the arrival of the Spanish. Swords, ships, and bells. A new kind of time arrived in Mesoamerica, and it didn't ask politely. You watch a group of elders dressed in white tunics pass quietly into the chapel. One of them carries a conch shell. Another has a small bundle of candles and corn. Behind them, above the door, hangs a carved wooden Christ figure, wearing a feathered headdress. Welcome to the uneasy marriage of calendars. When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, they brought their own version of sacred time, Christian liturgical calendars, saint feast days, the Julian and later Gregorian systems. These didn't line up neatly with the Sokin or Hob. In fact, the friars considered the Mayan systems pagan blasphemy. So naturally, they tried to erase them. They destroyed codices, countless handwritten bark paper books containing astronomical records, rituals, and calendars. They burned them in bonfires while reciting prayers. One bishop even bragged that he'd destroyed more than 5,000 idols and 27 rolls of hieroglyphs. He called it salvation. Historians now call it cultural arson. And yet, the calendars survived. Because people whispered them, hid them, braided them into Catholic feast days, syncretized them with saints. They disguised their gods as apostles and their solstice ceremonies as Christmas novenas. And while one calendar rang with bells, another ticked quietly underground. You enter the chapel now, where smoke from copal incense curls beneath the crucifix. At first, you think it's out of place. But then you notice something. The altar sits not on the Gregorian date, but on the 13th day of the Sokin. Quietly, discreetly, both calendars are in use. Historians still argue whether this blending was strategic survival or a genuine merger of belief systems. But ask the locals, and they'll tell you, we follow both. Because the stars don't change when you change your prayers. Outside, you hear church bells ring. It's noon, officially. But a nearby elder shakes her head gently and points to the sun's position. She mutters something about still being in the morning. And honestly, she's right. Noon is a construct. The sun is the truth. You pass a mural painted on the side of the chapel, Jesus surrounded by 12 disciples. But if you look closer, the 12 are wearing Maya day signs. One carries a jaguar. Another, a maize stalk. You smile. This isn't just resistance. It's resilience through clever art. Down the path, a group of children is learning to write both the Latin alphabet and glyphs. They chant them side by side, A, B, C, then a mix, A, K-ball. Their teacher doesn't see contradiction, just continuity. The Spanish calendar eventually became dominant, of course, used in courts, for taxes, for maps. But in kitchens, gardens, and ceremony, the Mayan calendar never left. It folded itself around the new structure like roots wrapping stone. And over time, the people learned to keep two clocks in their heads, one for society, one for the soul. You think of how different this was from other colonized cultures, where timekeeping systems were smashed and forgotten. Here, time didn't break. It went undercover. And now, centuries later, it's re-emerging. You hear it in festivals where Christian saints are honored on the exact days their pre-Columbian counterparts once reigned. You see it in the way farmers still plant by moon phase and Sokin day names. You feel it in the slow, quiet defiance of people who let one calendar ring the bells, and the other guide their hands. As you walk away from the chapel, the bells still echoing behind you, you glance at the sky. The sun says it's almost 1 o'clock. But the wind through the leaves? It says it's still the 11th hour. You find yourself walking along a winding dirt path now, one that veers away from grand temples and tourists clutching guidebooks. It takes you deeper into the hills, past quiet farms, crooked fences, and maize fields that rustle like low conversation. A boy waves at you from a doorway. Behind him, his grandmother is tending to a fire and murmuring something rhythmic, soft syllables that feel like calendar math disguised as prayer. This is the part of timekeeping they don't always write about, the modern Maya, who still chart their days using celestial rhythms older than empire, older than asphalt, older than almost everything. You arrive at a small village where people still rise not by alarm clocks, but by the tone of the birds. If the chichalacas are loud, the weather will turn. If Venus is visible just before dawn, certain herbs will be stronger today. Their lives are quiet, but their time sense is vivid. An elder invites you to sit with her outside her home, beneath a tree that leans like it knows things. She carries a woven bag filled with tiny wooden sticks, worn smooth by use. She pulls them out, counts, mutters, rearranges them on the mat. This is divination by calendar count, a sacred and practical act. You don't interrupt. She's not performing. She's working. She tells you this day is 7 Cat, a day of entanglements, connections, and hidden ties. Good for repairing relationships, but bad for holding grudges. You nod slowly, as if you weren't just planning to ignore 3 texts from people you'd rather not deal with. This is how it works here. Each day still has a meaning, a soul. People schedule weddings, baptisms, and healing ceremonies based on its soak-in count. If a day is hot or cold in energy, it matters. Not symbolically, literally. One misstep, and you could cook a stew that sours, or sow seeds that never sprout. Historians used to think the calendar died out after conquest. But that's because they weren't looking in the right places. They looked in cities, schools, government buildings. But here, in the folds of these hills and the shadows of these kitchens, the calendar lived quietly, humming beneath the surface, passed down in whisper and practice. You watch as the elder's grandson joins her, copying her layout of sticks with his own tiny set. She gently corrects him, tapping his hand with a smile. He laughs, rearranges, and says something about the next full moon. He's not just mimicking. He's learning to listen to time. You ask her if she keeps a written calendar. She shakes her head. "In here," she says, tapping her temple. "And here," she adds, tapping the ground. Later, you join a group walking through the maize fields, and a young man explains how his family still chooses planting days by moon phase and hob season. "The calendar tells us what the soil is in the mood for," he says, dead serious. You ask if people ever just plant when it's convenient. He chuckles. "Sure." And then the rain forgets to come. At a nearby school, a teacher shows you how they blend both systems, Gregorian for exams, soak-in for cultural days. "My students know how to write their names in glyphs," she says proudly. "And they know what their day sign means." One girl tells you she's a 10-9, a jaguar, strong and quick. Her teacher smiles. "She's never late to class," she adds, "but she disappears very fast after it ends." You realize that here, in these quiet folds of the land, time is not measured. It's cultivated, nurtured, spoken to, and occasionally ignored when it gets moody. There's something soothing about it. No buzzing notifications. No monthly resets. Just a rhythm that breathes, passed from hand to hand, generation to generation. And in the gentle nod of the elder beside you, in the soft scratch of her grandson's counting sticks, you hear the calendar still whispering, just as it always has. Dusk curls its fingers around the hills as you follow a narrow footpath lit by torchlight and low humming voices. You're walking toward a high clearing, and above you, the sky is starting to sparkle, but not with stars, not yet. It's something else. A single, unwavering point of brightness on the eastern horizon. Venus. The Mayan priests watched Venus like it was a divine performance, rising, disappearing, re-emerging like a dancer with impeccable timing and dramatic flair. To them, Venus wasn't just a planet. It was a force, a messenger, a war herald, a calendar in motion. Tonight, you're going to see why. A group of villagers has gathered in the clearing, where a flat stone altar sits just off-center, angled not toward the sun, but toward Venus' expected position. The elders sit cross-legged on mats. The younger ones hold bowls of offerings, honey, maize dough, cacao beans wrapped in cloth. And then, there it is, a quiet intake of breath across the crowd as the morning star peaks above the tree line. A pinpoint of light, brighter than anything else in the sky, pulsing gently in the darkening blue. Someone whispers, "The day of the jaguar begins." You remember now, the Maya tracked Venus' cycle obsessively, its rise as morning star, its disappearance, its return as evening star. Its 584-day synodic cycle was folded perfectly into their calendar. They aligned wars with Venus risings. They timed royal ceremonies and temple dedications to its movements. It was a celestial heartbeat they listened to with devoted ears. A timekeeper now steps to the altar and lights a small clay burner. Copal smoke rises, drawn into the night air. He speaks to the sky, not loudly, but with confidence, as if Venus is a guest of honor and he's delivering the welcome toast. Historians still debate whether the Mayans believed Venus caused events, or merely reflected them. Was it an actor or a narrator? But here, in this clearing, you begin to suspect the answer is both. You glance around. Everyone's watching Venus like it might blink back. And it feels alive. You sit beside a young girl holding a painted codex. She flips through it slowly. The pages are filled with Venus tables, rows and rows of dots, bars, and glyphs, each marking an important date. She tells you her grandfather taught her how to read them, how to count days of invisibility, heliacal risings, and conjunctions with the sun. It sounds like complex math, but for her, it's just storytelling. Each time Venus returns, she says, "We remember who we are." You nod. What else can you say? She adds, "Some days, Venus is good. Some days, not so much." She doesn't elaborate. She doesn't need to. Because Venus days in the Mayan world were charged. Some were seen as violent. Others were peaceful. Some were forbidden. People postponed vows, marriages, even travel based on Venus' position. It wasn't superstition, it was pattern recognition layered with sacred meaning. You ask how they knew so precisely when Venus would rise. She just points at the codex. We remember. And she's right. The Maya had centuries of observations, recorded, corrected, and refined. They didn't need telescopes. They had persistence. The wind picks up. The torches flicker. The ceremony is ending. Offerings are placed on the altar. Not grand, just small things, a bit of chocolate, a folded note, a feather. The kind of gifts you give to a very old friend who still shows up, right on time. You stay a while longer, watching Venus climb higher. The stars around it begin to blink into view, Orion, Scorpio, the Pleiades, but none outshine it. You think back to the start of your journey, how confusing the calendar seemed, how overwhelming the cycles. But now, with Venus hovering silently above you, something settles inside. Time isn't meant to be controlled. It's meant to be accompanied. You stand up and begin the walk back through the jungle, Venus always at your shoulder like a lantern bearer. You're not counting the days anymore. You're just noticing them. You walk slowly through dawn mist, dew soaking the cuffs of your pants, birds tuning up like they're testing morning harmonies. The village is quiet now, people still sleeping, smoke barely curling from kitchen hearths, but something hums under it all. Not a sound. A presence. You stop at the edge of a clearing where a single, moss-covered stela stands surrounded by short stones arranged in a circle. It's not marked with kings or gods. Just glyphs. Days. Counted, rolled, re-rolled. This, you sense, is not a monument to a person. It's a monument to time itself. Here, you begin to understand a deeper Mayan belief, that time is alive. Not just a thing to be measured, but a force that breathes, interacts, even chooses. Time can favor you. It can test you. It can open its arms, or turn away without warning. You sit near the circle, letting your body fall still. No devices. No agenda. The wind moves the leaves in irregular rhythms, and you try to follow it. Behind you, a rooster calls 3 times, no more. You close your eyes and let the texture of the day introduce itself. To the Maya, time had personality. Each day wasn't neutral, it was infused with mood, influence, and potential. A day could be hot or cold, sharp or soft, favorable for planting, dangerous for speaking out, perfect for healing, cursed for travel. And the only way to navigate it wisely? Listen. You watch as a timekeeper arrives. Not a priest. Not a showman. Just a man in a simple tunic carrying a bundle of corn husks and beads. He places them in the center of the circle and begins to speak, not to you, but to the day. A greeting. A request. A reminder. He says the name of the day out loud, Ninaja. You don't know what it means yet, but the way he says it, it's like calling someone by their true name. It's an invitation. A declaration of awareness. I see you, day. And I'm showing up. Historians still debate just how literally the Maya treated this idea of time as being. Was it metaphor? Poetry? Spiritual cosmology? But here, watching this quiet act of morning reverence, you stop asking. You feel the day breathing back. And slowly, everything starts to click. The overlapping calendars. The sacred alignments, the offerings, the shadow tracking, the endless rolls of glyphs. They weren't tools to control time. They were ways to coexist with it. The Maya didn't try to trap time in a box. They tried to understand its moods, anticipate its patterns, honor its surprises. You walk now toward a nearby field where someone is planting maize. Not a tractor in sight. Just a man with a sharpened stick, punching seeds into the soil. He says he always plants on a Toj day, a time for payment, for giving back. He doesn't plant based on weather forecasts or harvest trends. He plants because the day agrees to receive. There's something radical about it. You think about how most modern time feels mechanical, numbers clicking forward whether you're ready or not. But here, time pauses to ask, are you in rhythm? Even in cities now, some Mayan descendants still wake and check not just the date, but the character of the day. There are apps for that now, digital silken calculators, but the spirit is the same. You don't just exist in time. You negotiate with it. You reach into your pocket, feeling the flat smoothness of a small glyph-carved stone someone gave you earlier. You don't know what it says. You only know it's meant to be carried until the day feels right to leave it somewhere meaningful. So you place it gently at the base of the stela. A gift to time. No expectations. Just thanks. And for a long moment, the jungle is silent. Then a breeze picks up, and a single flower petal drops beside the stone. You think maybe, just maybe, time accepted. You've wandered far today. Through shadow and sunlight, whispers and ceremony, laughter and long silences. Now, as the sky slides from amber to violet and the crickets begin their nightly concert, you return to where it all started, beneath the canopy, among the temples, surrounded by the quiet machinery of time. But something is different now. You're not walking through the calendar anymore. You're walking with it. You make your way to a small stone platform at the edge of the plaza. From here, you can see the tips of pyramids poking through treetops like ancient teeth, still biting gently into the fabric of the sky. The stones beneath you are warm from the day. You lie back and exhale. Overhead, the stars are arriving, one by one. Venus is already waiting. And as you stare upward, you begin to feel the full weight, not the burden, but the beauty of the system you've just spent so many steps inside. This wasn't just a method for telling days. It was a language for living. A way to measure not only what time it is, but what kind of time it is. Because the Maya didn't just ask, what day is today? They asked, what is this day for? Was it for planting? Remembering? Forgiving? Beginning again? They didn't punch clocks. They lit incense. They didn't set alarms. They watched Venus rise. They didn't count down, they counted through, cycling with the world instead of racing ahead of it. And now, here you are. You lie there long enough for the moon to rise and the cicadas to get lazy. Someone nearby is humming a tune that has no words, no end. Just rhythm. You realize now that time, true time, isn't cold or clinical. It doesn't live in spreadsheets or sync across devices. It lives in rituals, in seasons, in the soft tick of memory passed down through hands. And though you'll return to your own calendar soon, with its deadlines, holidays, daylight savings flips, you'll carry something else now too. A quiet echo. A steady breath. A whisper that says, count differently. Honor the day. Speak to it. Let it speak back. You close your eyes. Not because you're tired, but because, finally, you're in time. Let the weight of your body sink into the mattress now, soft and slow, like moss settling on stone. The journey you've taken tonight didn't race toward a finish line, it circled, gently, patiently, just as the Maya believed all time should. Round and round. Breathing in, breathing out. Picture the stars you saw overhead, pinpricks of ancient fire in a sky untouched by wires or windows. Picture Venus still hanging there, quiet, radiant, keeping its own time, like a friend who waits even when you forget to show up. Feel the hum of shadow clocks, the long breath of khattuns drifting across generations, the hands of timekeepers laying sticks gently in the dirt. No alarms here. No deadlines. Just the rhythm of being. And maybe, just maybe, some part of you has started to shift too. Maybe tomorrow you'll glance up instead of down. Maybe you'll feel the day rather than chase it. Maybe you'll count your time not in tasks, but in meaning. Let the stillness hold you now. Let the calendars sleep around you. Let your breath join the old rhythm. Inhale, exhale, count, not forward, not back, but through. The stars are above. The earth is beneath. And between them, you are perfectly placed. Wrapped in time. Just as you are. Just as you were meant to be.